You like my philosopher stump? I look all philosophical like that. So recently, maybe the past 2 months, I've been in a slump. This has happened to me like a lot of times. I've been in slumps here and down. Like your journey on improving yourself is always ups and downs, ebbs and flows, right? You're gonna go down and then you're gonna go up and come back down again, and it'll keep going like that. It's like that graph. And I could make a lot of excuses up and avoid responsibility. I could say that, oh, I went for Umrah, I went to Saudi, I was going light there. Um, when I came back, I got sick for a week. I can make all these excuses up, but that's not going to solve my problem. Bad. The problem that I find myself, I feel like I finally identified the problem and why I tend to fall into these slumps and these like periods of inconsistency, and it's a little nuanced. It's basically that I just forget. I don't know if you're like me, but you're maybe you have like a really good day, you work out, you hit all your habits, you get a lot of work done. And then when you go to sleep and wake up the next day, you're just kind of like your mind is blank. Like even when I schedule my day, my mind is kind of blank. I forget the importance of doing these small habits that I've set out for myself, and then I just end up skipping them and just watching YouTube instead. So I think forgetfulness is actually a really big thing that people overlook. Like I never hear anyone talk about just forgetting to do their little self-improvement routine. But that's something I run into all the time. Whether it's that I forget to do it at all or that I forget the importance, like I said earlier. And that's why I found that having an accountability partner, this isn't my advice to you, but just by experience of having an accountability partner who also does YouTube, we would do like these calls like once or twice a week, and that kept me pretty consistent because it kept reminding me that, oh, I'm doing YouTube. This guy's also doing YouTube. Oh, he uploaded 2 times more than I have, and they're both better videos. He's working harder than I am. So it kept me locked in, whereas on my own, I'd always be locked out. So I think obviously having an accountability partner who's also on the same journey as you, it might be hard to find if you're like into business. Actually, no, it's not. There's a ton of communities online. But the point is that accountability partners are helpful, but that's not the point I'm trying to get across. The point I'm trying to get across, the point that I'm trying to get across is the forgetfulness. So how do we combat this forgetfulness, right? I think it's connecting to wisdom. Now let me explain that. What does connecting to wisdom mean? So I've read a lot of books in my lifetime, especially the past like 1 or 2 years. I've read like 50 to 70 books. I don't know, but I've read a lot of useful books where I actually learned things from them. But the problem is that, and you might find this as well, that when you read a book, even if you read it from cover to cover and you really liked it and you took a lot of notes, that still doesn't translate into application in your daily life. You can read the book and then after 2 days, you'll just forget about it. That forgetfulness, I think humans are a very forgetful species. Like we're built to forget. I think that forgetfulness is a big issue on people's consistency. Like if you're watching this video, you're watching like a self-improvement type of video where it's not really edited that much. You probably want to work hard. You probably want to work hard, but just feel like you can't because, and I would argue that's because you just forget. Like you've worked hard before, but you forget to work hard, if that makes sense. So what I'm proposing is something that I've done in the past that I've identified that actually works. Meaning that when I've done this like one thing which I call connecting to wisdom, I've always been consistent. I've always been on all of my habits and I've always been getting a ton of work done. But when I'm not connecting to wisdom, I'm always off track. I'm not doing any habits. I'm not following my schedule at all. None of that. So my how I discovered this, what I call connecting to wisdom, is that a lot of times I would just read books and forget what I read. And that's what prompted this. So I have like this database called Notion that I use to like take notes on like everything in life. Like if I have a good idea, I write it down there. I do all my reading notes in there. So when I'm reading books, I take like the actionable steps and the concepts and I put them in there. So what I would find is that yeah, I forget what I read a lot of times and that really bothered me, but I knew that like if you read a book from cover to cover, you're obviously gonna forget most of it, especially as time goes on. So I have these documents, I have these pages filled with notes, and what I would do is because I forgot what I read, I would just go back to these notes like on a daily basis, like in the mornings, and read through like the actionable steps that I put for myself. And I would pick one and I would try to make that the action step for the day. Like I would focus on that during the day. And in that way I actually started applying stuff. And why I call this connecting to wisdom is that when you're not connected to and this is not the only way. There's other ways like watching like self-improvement content for like 30 minutes a day at the same time like in the morning, or having an accountability partner like I said, or having friends around you, having a group around you that's also on the same grind, on the same struggle, because they'll be the ones to remind you. Just imagine you live in a house with four other dudes who are doing the same thing as you. Let's say you're doing YouTube like me. When you wake up, if you wake up and you see two other guys in the house recording videos, you're not just gonna go start gaming. You're gonna start recording videos because you're gonna remember, oh shoot, I'm a YouTuber. What I'm supposed to do is be making videos. These guys are making videos in front of me. Why would I not make videos? You get reminded constantly, and I think this is why in Islam, in our religion of Islam, reading the Quran and remembering Allah like constantly is so heavily emphasized, and going to the mosque, because these things remind you of Allah. Remind you of Allah. Why do we have to be reminded? Because we forget. If you don't read the Quran for 3 months, you don't go to the masjid for 3 months, and you don't even hang around Muslim people for 3 months, you're gonna forget Allah. You're going to forget the blessings that you have. We are forgetful creatures by nature. We are built to forget things because if they're not important, we're going to forget them. If they're not like emotionally, if we don't have an emotional connection to them, we're going to forget them, right? Like this whole, I'm going to forget everything that happened to this day 10 years from now. That sounds silly and obvious, but it really puts into perspective that we are going to forget things. And because of that, if we want to make any like big change in our life, we have to put a system in place to make that happen, or else we're just gonna forget and then become the person that we were before. We're trying to go up here and become like a better person, but we're just gonna forget and we're gonna fall back down here. So another system that I would use is identity. You might have heard this before, you might have not. Identity. To change your identity is to become a new person, right? And how you do that is you shit, how do I explain this? Like simply. So what a lot of high level so what a lot of high level entrepreneurs do is that they figure out who they want to become. They write it down, they describe it. They describe their perfect future self and what they do, what kind of person they are. And they have this on a document. Maybe it's like he's a very disciplined guy, he reads a lot, he works out every day. Characteristics like that that explain your future self. And then what they do is that they read this every day, and that reminds them of who they are. Frick. You don't. Frick, this is gonna take a lot to explain. Identity. Okay, that's why scripts are kind of good. So basically, for identity, you have to become a new person. Freak, that's hard to explain. How do I explain it? I suck at explaining things, so I'm gonna get good at explaining things right now. How do you change your identity? You first find out who you want to become. You write that down, and then you decide to become that person right now. So you are disciplined. You are the CEO. You are the YouTuber, whatever. And then you start acting in accordance to that because you already are that person. So if you're acting as if you already are that person, what would you do? And then you do those actions. Now, I've been like kind of averse to like using identity because when I was in this educational program called the Honest School, there was this like high level CEO that everyone loves. He's a founder of School. His name is he's the founder of this platform, online community platform called School, and his name is Sam Ovens. And what he said in like an exclusive educational coaching call type of thing is that identity is stupid and it doesn't matter. All you have to do is show up to work. And I believed it. I didn't think for myself. I was like, okay, maybe this guy's right. But the thing is, this Sam Ovens guy, he's not optimizing for life. He's optimizing for maximum business. He doesn't care if he's like fat as long as it doesn't get in the way of his business. His business is his life. Whereas me and you, we probably would like to make some money, but we don't want the business to be like 100% our life, and we don't like live life at all. We don't go outside in nature. We don't have like lean aesthetic bodies, you know what I mean? But the point is, I'm very off topic now. I've branched out very far. The point is that we have to connect to wisdom or else we are going to forget the journey we're on. And there's many ways we could do this, as I've mentioned throughout this video. And my favorite is a combination of all of these, to be honest. So this is the answer to fix your slumps. You have to constantly connect to this wisdom so you don't forget and so that you can constantly apply new things. Because what happens if you don't connect to wisdom? Well, what's happened to me the past like 2 months is what happens. You forget these ideas and you regress to your former self. Like literally, I've been in such a slump that I haven't played video games for like a long time, like maybe once here and there. But for the past 2 days, I've just been playing video games. Like I even downloaded Clash Royale, which was a game I used to play when I was like 12 on my phone. I just started playing it like mindlessly. I didn't meditate. I didn't cold shower. I didn't do any of my habits that I find helpful. And I just felt like shit, to be honest. Like I regressed to a form. I regressed to my gamer self, basically. I started gaming, just thinking about games, just wasting time, instant gratification, YouTube all day, anime all day. I regressed. I regressed because I wasn't connected to wisdom that keeps me going forward. That's why you have to connect to wisdom, or else you're going to forget and you're going to fall backwards. You're going to regress. Because when you're connected to wisdom, you take the right actions, you stay motivated and inspired on the path that you're going on. You're constantly learning, you're constantly reading, learning more. And that's how you get to the next level because the current you needs wisdom to get to the next level. Because if you already had the wisdom, if you already had the smarts and information that you needed to get to the next level and you were applying that information, then you would already be at the next level. But for some reason, either you don't have the information or you're not applying it. So you have to constantly connect to wisdom. And from there, just level up. If I were to make like a metaphor or like an analogy on what connecting to wisdom would look like, it's kind of like grim. But imagine like your body is like you're just standing there. Like imagine the Matrix, the movie, where like people are like connected to like something greater. Like there's like a lot like a pipe running through their head to something greater, like a bigger body. Like your brain is like plugged in to a greater wisdom. Like it's just plugged into like a really big computer or something. Like just imagine that your brain has like a plug and you've plugged it in to something greater, something like a big body of knowledge. That's what being connected to wisdom is like. Because you on your own, you're weak, you're not knowledgeable. You're going to fall prey to like negative thoughts and stuff like that. But when you're connected to wisdom, when you read books like The Magic of Thinking Big, you start thinking bigger. You start having a positive self-image. When you read books like Psycho-Cybernetics, when you read books like The Charisma Myth, you start to embody charisma because you start to embody charisma. When you read books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, you get more friends, you become more influential. When you read books like The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership from John C. Maxwell, you become a better leader. And that's only when you're connected to the wisdom, because you can read the 21 laws of leadership and forget them all the next day because you're not connected to it. You're not actively applying that. You're not looking back on your notes. You're not affirming your new identity. You're not doing any of these things. So obviously you're going to be in a slump. Obviously you're going to fall back. You're going to regress. You're going to go back to who you were before because you're not pushing for the new change. And you push for the new change by being connected to wisdom, man. No one talks about this, bro. No one talks about this. And that's why this is the best channel on YouTube, because we make this shit obvious. We make it obvious what you need to do. And that's why you should also be reading the Quran. Because if you're not reading the Quran daily, you're just going to fall into this secular self-improvement path and you're going to forget Allah. And that's not what we want. We're not trying to become super successful in this dunya but not pray our 5 daily prayers, not be close to Allah, not be improving in our deen. Because this life, between me and you, we both know that it doesn't really matter. Like, we would love to be very successful in whatever, however you define that. Maybe that means making $2,000 a month, living in someone else's house for like $100 a month, and just doing whatever you want. I don't know what your definition of success is. For me, it's a little different. It's a little different for everybody, but would you, like, I can't imagine myself just sitting in a room and just not doing anything for the rest of my life, or just, like, we want success in this dunya, but none of that success matters to us. Like, we honestly could not care less if we give up our deen. Because in the end, we're all gonna die, and we're gonna go to the afterlife and be judged by Allah on the Day of Judgment. That is the end. So we have to optimize for that end by reading the Quran, by going to the masjid, because all of these things remind us of Allah. Having Muslim friends reminds us of Allah. And when you're constantly reminded, you remember, and from there you can actually improve. Because, you know, it's funny because sometimes when I'm reading the Quran less frequently, I would come across a verse that I, like, never really thought about, but I knew the verse. You know what I mean? Let's see if I can find an example. Like this verse in Surah Taqabun, which it basically says to like overlook and pardon other people's faults. Like if your parents get like really mad at you, just like overlook it, just pardon them. That like ayah, that verse from the Quran, like if you weren't reading the Quran like every day, you wouldn't run into a verse like that and remember to like overlook your parents' faults, or overlook your friends' faults. And if you don't remember to do stuff like that, you're not gonna improve. You know what I mean? So by reading the Quran daily, by remembering Allah daily, you're able to improve because you're connected to that wisdom. And if you see that that's what we're doing in Islam, right? We're remembering Allah, we're remembering through the Quran, we're remembering the Sunnah. If remembering is so important for our Islam, imagine how important that would be for like improving in general in this life, in the next. Like, to improve is to remember what you need to do. And you do that by connecting to wisdom. This is probably like a 30-minute long video. I'm going to try to re-record it. And it'll be better the second time. Hopefully it doesn't rain. Hopefully it doesn't stop recording either.